Our comrades, Ava and Jack, gave their lives for the COI. Remember, this is bigger than us.
Life in the COI is one of community, sacrifice, and ambition. I want to yap about it. Hey, I'm a yapper, and today I'm going to be yapping about life in the COI. Make sure to check out my other video on life in Eden, and subscribe if you want to hear more yapping. As always, spoilers, and these are the timestamps. If there's anything in particular that you wish to know or learn about the COI, then just skip right ahead to those. The COI, or Consolidation of Iron, is a collective group originally made up of 4 stations and 2 ships. That number was reduced to 3 stations after the Filament Station incident occurred. They formed up around the idea of collectivism, with the ideology of "this is bigger than us," referring to the COI's main goal, which is the future for survival of humanity despite the Quiet Rapture. They have a population of around 257 people and have suffered heavy losses, mostly thanks to Eden. We don't get much about the society of the COI from the movie, but we can make assumptions based on evidence, and I will! First of all, they seem to have a very militaristic way of life, given how they seem to have a very apparent hierarchy, with Ava mentioning the Council. According to the wiki, they are ruled by collectivism and popular vote, and are built upon the principles of unity and togetherness against outside threats, these mostly being Eden, but any new threats that may make themselves apparent as life in this dead space carries on. People that live in the COI agree with the ideology and support the COI's goal despite the costs, with the events of Filament Station and the threat of Eden pushing them all closer together. The wiki states that it is implied that the COI has democratic socialist principles, collective ownership of major infrastructure, which makes sense given the situation that these couple hundred humans find themselves in. The COI seem more tied together socially by collective ideals over a collective faith, which is the major difference between themselves and Eden. It is noted multiple times that Eden is very patriotic of its Martian origin, but the COI has no such ties. The only ties the COI has, especially after the Quiet Rapture, is to the human race itself. Their slogan, "This is bigger than us," carries them forward despite the cold and ever-growing darkness. This is sacrifice, regardless of the hows and whys. The COI is fighting for a future, refusing to believe that this is the end of them. It's the same song that humans have been singing since we crawled out of the caves and into the light. We live for something bigger than us. Anyway, enough of that fancy sentiment. Moving on to something I find incredibly fascinating, and one of the more interesting parts of the COI, is their ships and stations. I suspect that 1 or 2 of these stations was based around Earth, with the remaining being more deep space, either mining in the asteroid belt or researching other planets in our solar system separate to Mars. This is because I don't really see why we would have multiple stations surrounding Earth. It seems like a waste of resources, especially when we were able to colonize Mars in the 1990s. But this would give the COI an edge over Eden, because Eden was a seeding station to help colonize Mars. The other stations were outfitted for long-term space exploration, research, and material collection, all of which would have had to support around 80 people for years, given the distance to Earth or to Eden Station before the Quiet Rapture. In regards to the 2 ships the COI has, I believe one of them, or both of them, were trade vessels, one of which would become quickly retrofitted into the tow ship in which the Iron Lung were deployed from. The main indicator of this is in the movie, where you can see that the tow ship has heavy-duty doors placed on the bottom of the hangar. We don't know much of life before the Quiet Rapture, but if people were able to colonize Mars in the late 90s, then I suspect that they weren't as war-hungry as our real-life selves. Yes, this could have been a dropship, but I feel like trade is far more likely, especially given the nature of Eden and the other stations. This is all just a theory based on how the tow ship operates in the movie. Those doors wouldn't have been able to be retrofitted post-Rapture, because the COI don't have a station large enough, so it's easy to suspect that the tow ship was originally a resupply or trade ship. But if humanity's goals before the Quiet Rapture was exploration and expansion, with deep space stations, then it's not far-fetched to assume both of these ships contain supplies for long-term deep space survival, which explains the higher quality of clothing and technology. The COI seem to have a much more stable economy in regards to basic supplies compared to Eden. As previously mentioned, the COI is built up of 4 stations and 2 ships. In addition, it contains the smallest population of 257 people post-Filament Station. We can also see the superior economy in the clothing and equipment that we very briefly see from Ava, Jack, and David. 2 of these characters are almost impossible to fully identify their full clothing. However, despite the porthole obscuring and blurring them, it is still apparently much higher quality compared to Simon's clothing, or anyone else we see on Eden Station. And keep in mind, if my assumption is right and that these stations were spread around our solar system, I don't think it's out of the question for us to have been mining an asteroid belt, are harvesting other resources from other planets. So after the Quiet Rapture, we can assume there is a collection of raw resources for them to use. The extent in which these go, however, I cannot probably make a theory on. There's not enough evidence to work with. One of the most major bits of information that led me to believe that a few of these stations were either mining or research based is the SM model of submarines. Let's start with the mining side. The SM-13's full concept design was released a few weeks ago, and I was lucky enough to catch one of David Smatsky's streams in which he discusses it. And it is here that we learn that the SM-13 doesn't actually float, it's not really a submarine. The bottom segments aren't even ballast tanks like originally believed, but are instead more akin to tank treads. The SM-13 is literally an ocean crawler. This is how Salmon is able to climb up hills in the movie. But what's super interesting about these treads is the design itself. We do not know the extent in which the COI is able to fabricate components, and given how scrappy and put together the SM-13 is, we can assume that it is very limited. And so these stations or ships would have had to already have these treads in storage, and know that they weren't manufactured within the COI because, well, look at them. They're probably the most put together object on the SM-13 besides the porthole. But these threads heavily resemble a piece of equipment called spiral classifier. According to Google, it is one of the size classifying equipment for the mining industry. It is a kind of equipment for mineral classification based on the principle that the specific gravity of solid particles and the speed of precipitation in the liquid is different. This is a major indicator to me that one or two of the 4 stations were equipped with mining equipment. Okay, so what about the technological superiority compared to Eden? Well, for that we can look at literally everything in the movie. The fact that they were able to map out a large section of the bottom of 85 and recognise anomalies. They could also measure the moon's activity and if it's stable enough or not for expeditions. The fact that they could even make the SM-8, 13 and 14 out of storage modules. Yes, I believe that's what the SM stands for. I've not seen anybody make this realization, but in a universe in which every resource is important, it'd be easy to just leave the SM up instead of painting on a new indicator. That's why they're named in such an odd number. There's also the SM-8 being a fully scientifically fitted vessel with the ability to analyze blood, and they allude to the idea that we can fabricate food and supposedly oxygen out of this blood. In addition, the crew of the SM-8 were scientists. Eden has its faith. It is a station built around a colony and was more a port when the Quiet Rapture occurred. But the COI stations? That's a population of miners, scientists, pilots, etc. No wonder their society is the way it is. They have the resource, technology and intellect to be able to take care of everybody. And that's that. That is the life you can expect in the COI. Thank you for watching. I do have a couple of other Iron Lung video essays uploaded if you want to go check those out, and I may make more in the future, but I currently have another video game I want to yap about in the future, so if you want to stick around for that, then please subscribe. Special thanks to my Patreons for supporting me. If you want to help the channel, then please consider joining. It's just $2 roonies. Link in the description. Probably, maybe, yes. Maybe one day I'll figure out how to end these videos. Probably not. I don't know.